So here's a question for you. Is Britain a nation of shoplifters? Retail giants like John Lewis and Primark have joined industry calls for authorities to crack down on the problem, arguing that not enough is being done to tackle the issue.
Well, Policing Minister Chris Philp is at Westminster. Good to speak to you this morning. So we've been hearing John Lewis has revealed that £12 million of goods were stolen last year from them. Dame Sharon White, in charge, has called it an epidemic. And yet, changes in the law in 2014 meant that shoplifting goods under £200 are only treated as a summary offence with a fine. Is this partly government making this epidemic because it's effectively been accused of almost decriminalising it?
Well, good morning. So, first of all, we definitely haven't decriminalised shoplifting. Shoplifting of any value is a criminal offence. And I met with Dame Sharon and other retailers, the Co-op, Sainsbury's and others, just a week or so ago with police to talk about this issue. So over the last 10 years, crime generally has fallen significantly. But in the last year or two, specifically for shoplifting, there has been a worrying increase that Sharon White and others have referred to. So what I'm asking police to do is really take a much tougher approach on that by, for example, always investigating where there is evidence that can be followed up. We actually announced that, the Home Secretary and I and policing leaders a couple of weeks ago. And in shoplifting, almost always you have CCTV footage of the person stealing the goods. And if that is provided to the police, they can run it through the Police National Database. And the facial recognition matching software is now so sophisticated that even if the image is a bit fuzzy, very often it can be matched. So I'd like, first of all, every incident to be investigated where there is evidence that can be followed up.
So are shops not doing that currently and are police not doing that currently?
Well, it varies, to be honest. And I think, it would be helpful if shops provided more evidence, but I think also police need to do more on the investigation side.
One of the issues they would say, Mr. Philp, is one of the issues they would say, provided the thief stays under £200, it becomes a summary offence. They get charged, they get a fixed penalty notice of £70. They don't have to appear in front of the magistrate. So if they're wily about it, they just make sure they're not stealing more than £200. There's nothing more that the shop owners can do. And the police aren't going to go and investigate that because, of course, it's a summary offence. Well, a summary-only offence simply means that it gets tried in the magistrate's court rather than having a right to... But they don't have to appear and they get a fixed penalty notice of £70. They don't have to go to court. Yeah, well, I think if there's repeat offending, then that is treated differently, and I think it should always be followed up. I was going to add, the other thing that we're funding is hotspot patrolling, currently in 10 police force areas, but by next April it'll be every police force areas. We're funding it with £43 million next year, and that is designed to deal partly with antisocial behaviour, but I would also be encouraging the police and crime commissioners to direct that also to high streets where they're worried about shoplifting, so there are visible officers on the street. So what I'd like to see as police minister is a zero-tolerance approach to shoplifting, because I don't view it as a minor crime, and it's in danger of escalating.
Why has it gone up under this government's watch?
Well, it's been a phenomenon in the last, particularly the last year or two. As I said, overall crime, neighbourhood crime, which is burglary, theft and all that sort of thing, together is down by 51% under this government, and violence is down by, I think, 46%. So generally, crime is going down, but I do want to tackle this recent, tick up in shoplifting by taking a zero-tolerance approach. Because if shoplifting happens, it allows an atmosphere of menace to be created, and there is the risk of escalation. That is why a zero-tolerance approach, I think, is what's needed.
Have you asked the police why it's happening? I mean, yes, I appreciate that your figures say violence and other crimes have gone down, but this particular shoplifting, have you got to the bottom of why?
Well, there's a few different things. I mean, there are some criminal gangs who are on an organised basis doing this, and I think Sharon White, the chief executive of John Lewis, who you mentioned and I met last week, has pointed to that. So there's a project called Project Pegasus, which is being led by Katie Bourne, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner in Sussex, with retailers and the police to specifically identify and then go after some of the more organised criminal gangs. I think the use of facial recognition software has a huge role to play here, because we now can get matches that allow us to identify prolific shoplifters, which lets the retailer do work preventatively and then lets the police follow up and prosecute afterwards as well. So we should use that technology as well as the boots on the ground, as it were. And we do now have, by the way, record police numbers, 149,566, and one of the, as just 3,500 more than we've ever had before. And one of the things I would like, and probably the public would like to see those officers doing, is protecting our high streets and following up all crime where there is a reasonable lead to follow. And we've agreed that with policing, so we now obviously expect it to happen.
What about one of the other things that Dame Sharon suggested, which is making the abuse of retail workers an actual offence, which it is in Scotland? Lots of the anecdotal evidence that we've had from retail workers is that they've been warned not to approach people they see that are shoplifting. The shoplifters attack them and are violent towards them. This is actually an abuse of retail workers, an offence in Scotland. Yeah. Is that not something that we could see implemented in England and Wales as well?
So a couple of points there. So firstly, members of the public and shop workers and shop security guards do have a right under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act to use reasonable force to prevent a crime from occurring and indeed to detain someone while they wait for a police officer.
Reasonable force. So they're worried about abuse. I mean, we've seen footage, albeit anecdotal, on this programme of shop workers literally having to stand back because of fear of that abuse, fear for their own health and safety, never mind the goods that are pouring out of the store.
Yeah, so I was just saying that people do have the power to do that, but look, clearly some retail workers have been assaulted, and that is very, very serious. You asked the question about the law. So clearly assaulting someone, anyone, is a criminal offence, ABH, GBH and so on. And we changed the law about 2 years ago, and it came into effect relatively recently, to say that in England and Wales, if the victim is someone who is serving the public, which could be a shopkeeper, but it could also be or a shop worker, it could be a bus driver or, you know, a train driver, anyone that's serving the public, then that is what's called a statutory aggravating factor. And what that means is a judge, when they're passing sentence, gives a significantly higher sentence where the victim is serving the public. So in England and Wales, we've done it that way. I know in Scotland they've got the separate offence, but it has the same effect. But the answer, I think, is a policing response and a prosecution response and shopkeepers doing preventative work. I think the law, you know, shoplifting is illegal, assaulting a retail worker is illegal. It's a statutory aggravating factor. It's not about changing the law. It's about the policing response, and it's about shopkeepers working preventatively using things like facial recognition.
Well, the shop workers need protection, don't they? And there is an epidemic of shoplifting at the moment, so something certainly needs to be done. Can we talk to you about the Met Police reaction in the Sarah Everard Vigil apology? Yesterday we had Danielle Al-Obeid and Patsy Stevenson on the show, two people who I'm sure you are very aware of. They became, well, certainly the picture of Patsy being arrested and taken away from that vigil became something that was seen all over the world. They've got compensation. They have been, effectively, they were told that they were apologised to. Can we just ask you about the wording of this apology? Because when we read it out on the show yesterday, we thought that there had been a typo, because the Met statement yesterday said the officer's actions were found to be appropriate. We felt that it should have said inappropriate by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabularies in good faith and entirely consistent with the colleagues from London at the time. No one's disputing it was a very difficult time for police officers because it was during COVID. But do you think their actions were appropriate?
Well, they look to me, as just at the time, you know, as a London MP, they look to me to be a bit heavy-handed, to be honest. I'm sure the ladies concerned gave an account of what they experienced when they came on the show yesterday. So, look, I'd like to see the Metropolitan Police ensure that all of their officers behave properly. Policing has asked for additional powers to make it easier to dismiss officers who commit misconduct, and we announced a week or two ago we are going to give them those powers. I met actually yesterday with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who of course is responsible for overseeing the Metropolitan Police, and the Commissioner, Matt Rowley, to talk about their work to turn the Met around. And I think on the conduct issues, they are making quite a lot of progress. I think what Londoners want to see as well is all of those crimes getting investigated too. Yeah. Even the less serious ones, or what people would think of as less serious, all should be investigated. But these conduct issues are serious, and the Mayor of London, and who's responsible for this, and the Commissioner, I think, are taking actions to improve them as they should.
I think you meant Mark Rowley, didn't you? Not Pat. There is a point here, though, that was really apparent with Dania and Patsy and the reaction to this, that this so-called apology had nothing like an apology in it.
We've yet to find the word sorry in it. I mean, it may be that we haven't seen some elements of it, but there doesn't seem to be the word sorry in the apology.
Dania said they haven't said the word sorry. They haven't apologised.
Well, if they've been paid compensation, then that would clearly indicate to me that something happened that wasn't right and that would merit an apology.
So would you be urging Met Police to say, actually, sorry?
Well, I think I'd want to hear their side of it, but on the face of it, yes.
Certainly feels like, from Patsy and Dania's perspective, a clear use of that word would go a long way to them understanding that the Met Police have taken on board what's happened and they're not having just to react because, you know, when it went to court, they were found to have been, you know, heavy-handed in their approach. Chris Philp,
we should, by the way, just keep in mind that the vast majority of police officers up and down the country are brave, dedicated and hard-working. I think we should always keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, but thank you for joining us this morning. That's Chris Philp.
Thank you.
Please, Imogen.